are. Look. Hey, look, we both have the same shirt.
Nice.
Product
We
placement.
should
Nice.
start this way. Hit
All
go.
right.
Hit go and we'll both.
Ready? 1, 2, 3.
All right.
Epic.
Are we live?
All right. Thanks everybody for coming, both in person and on the live stream. Today we got one demo, Zac Higgins from Resin Werks, and tomorrow we got 4 demos. Going to be action-packed. Epic. And if you guys are local coming, there'll be all kinds of stuff out back too going on. Plus, probably the best thing, pizza.
Pizza.
So they don't have pizza in Canada, right? So only in America. Do you guys have good pizza in Canada? Oh, good. So we have Mr. Gold all the way from Canada.
Yeah.
You know what I thought? I thought you were a gold hunter when I first heard your name. I didn't know
Gold.
why, but yeah. And then Jim came all the way from Texas. Thanks, Jim.
Yeah.
Do you drive?
Oh, always.
Yeah?
I'm way without my truck.
Yeah? That's awesome. Well, I hope you had a good trip. Anyway, this is Zac, everyone, from Resin Werks. He's going to do a little resin casting.
Yeah.
And I'm on the chat, and Amy's on the chat, so if we get any questions, we'll throw them out to you.
Cool. Is everything working good? Sound and all that for me?
Looks like you are good.
Cool. All right, guys. So for anybody that is watching at home and doesn't know what's going on, I do a lot of resin casting, sell pen blanks, and do turning. And I do my own streams on Saturdays, usually on my channel, but I'm not in town. So we're going to do streams at Turner's Warehouse, Turner's TV. So today what I'm going to do is we've done a little bit of Starlight glitter. This is a couple products that I use. Glitter is fun in pen blanks because it adds, like a lot of people know about like the mica powders, and that stuff's awesome, and it does some cool stuff, but adding some glitter adds, it sounds kind of silly, but it adds a little bit of extra fun to the blanks. And so I think a couple weeks ago, we made some blanks, maybe about a month ago, on my channel where we were looking at transparent dyes. So like, let's say we added like red, but it's totally see-through, like stained glass or something like that. Added a little bit of Starlight glitter to that. This time, I want to do something different, because we didn't do this on that last one. And I like to do experiments. I like to see what can happen anyway and just, throw some colors, some glitter or whatever together and see what we get. This time we're going to do it with some micas. It seems like you're like, oh, you have to add glitter to mica, but I like it. It produces some cool blanks. I actually did pour. We're going to try to mimic this, and I don't know where the cameras are.
There you go. Perfect.
So I did these at home, and this is a mix of colors that I've never made before, for sure. So we got a little bit, the one color that we don't have here, I added some of the Jungan silver from Eye Candy, but we got a mint green from P-Town. We've got a color that a lot of people don't use called Dusty Rose from P-Town. And then I'm going to substitute silver gray, which is a pretty good silver for the Jungan, and then royal purple. And what I did was I added, I got to remember what I did here. So we're going to go with the chunky Starlight glitter in the silver. And then I want to say that I added the thin, it's like super fine micro kind of Starlight glitter to the mint. And we could do either thing, but I'm going to be turning this tomorrow. So I thought, let's try and mimic this and see what's going on. I'm going to pass this around so you guys can look at it up close here. That's what we're trying to kind of mimic. And it's going to be pretty simple. Do we have a mold?
A mold would be super helpful.
Let
me go grab you one.
I was like, wait, I thought I grabbed one. I guess not. It's not in here, is it? Okay.
You want a vertical, right?
So what we're going to do vertical pours in the round. Like the vertical round things. You could do that in like a PVC pipe if you got PVC laying around. You could just tape it even. Turner's has excellent plugs for PVC pipes, and that's like the cheapest way to go. If you're just like, I'm not sure if I really want to do too many of these round vertical blanks, PVC is the way to go. If you're like, that's the way I want to do it, I would recommend probably getting silicone molds. They're just much easier to demold and just use in general, I think. You don't have to like pop the plugs out and deal with spraying mold release in there every single time. So
I went ahead and sprayed it for you in there, so it wasn't cloudy in here.
Cool. So we got a 12. Do you know how much each one of these takes offhand?
The 12 takes about 20 ounces.
20 ounces, okay. So today we're going to be using Alumilite Clear Slow. That is pretty much my favorite for the most part. I use a bunch of different resins for different types of scenarios, but for pen blanks, for you know, like handles and most of the things that we do, you know, for turning blanks, I usually use Alumilite Clear Slow. Sometimes I'll pull out something like Liquid Diamonds or Deep Pour from Alumilite if I need a lot of working time. That can help. If you're doing something like micarta where it takes a long time to layer each piece of paper or fabric or whatever you're doing, you're going to need a lot of time. Frankly, I go with Deep Pour. It's a 2-hour working time. But for most things, I like Alumilite Clear Slow because it's got enough time to get things done, whatever you're trying to do. But it also, you're not sitting there and having to wait overnight to get it out of the pressure pot. You can pull it out usually in about 4 hours, depending on the temperature in your shop. So it's a good one, and it has other advantages. It's 1-to-1 mix ratio, which I prefer. It's if you go over, it's a little bit harder to recoup. If it's like a 1-to-2, you're like, oh, I don't know where, you know, how much more do I add? It's much easier with a 1-to-1. So if you're being good about pouring it, you know, it's not that hard. It's not a big deal, but
Yeah.
I go over sometimes. So does anybody have any questions before we even begin? Just make sure that everybody's on the same page. So first thing we're gonna do, I don't have like a book. Usually I have like a notebook, but I already wrote down what I did for that blank, wherever that went. You can hold on to it for now. So I already have the notes for these blanks, but it's really, I think, important, honestly, to keep a notebook. If you're just doing a one-off thing and it doesn't matter, you don't ever want to do it again, fine, no big deal. But if you're getting into resin casting, and I would actually say this for anything, if you're getting into photography, if you're getting into marathon running, it's good to have a notebook of things that you're learning along the way and keep notes of stuff. So in this case, what I would write down is like, what mold am I using? How much resin am I using? What resin am I using? What am I adding to it? What colors or whatever? And then any other like notes. In this case, so I don't know, do you know what the temperature is out just off, generally in the shop here?
It's probably like 65, 70.
Yeah, somewhere between 65 and 70. Resins like warmer temperatures generally for curing. I generally don't recommend casting under 50 degrees Fahrenheit. You can run into issues where the resin doesn't cure properly, and so if at all possible, stay above 50. In some cases it gets so hot, especially like in Phoenix, it's like 150 degrees in the summer, right? And at that point you may run into problems.
It's not that hot. It's like 145.
Well, I don't know, that one time. But it's hot, right? So it may be difficult. And then humidity is another issue, especially with this resin. Urethane-based resins are gonna hate humidity, any kind of moisture. It'll bubble up and foam and be just a pain in the butt. So there are some issues, but we're in a pretty good temperature here. In general, this stuff will probably cure, like this mold, probably cure and be ready. You could pull it out in about 4 hours. A lot of times I just leave things in if I don't need to pull them out. It's not going to hurt anything to leave it in longer. If you pull it too soon, bubbles may come back. That's why we're using a pressure pot. So anyway, I think with all that said, is there anything else that I missed?
Just stall a little bit because I have cups coming over for you.
Cups?
I thought that was a new cup, but it's not.
Cups?
Cups, stir cups. Unless you want to use those.
Oh, like the big one?
Bigger ones, yeah.
Oh. Okay, yeah. So let's see, is there anything else going on? So the colors that we're going to do, like I said, royal purple, dusty rose, mint green, silver gray, and then I'm going to add a little bit of black. It just kind of adds a little bit of a, I like accent colors. Like if you got a bunch of dark colors, it's nice to add a little bit of white or silver or something like that. If you got a bunch of light colors, it's not too bad to add like, you know, purple's a good one. That's kind of dark. Black, obviously. I'm trying to think what other, like a dark blue. Just something to kind of create contrast in your blanks. That's kind of a good general recommendation, I think. Yeah, what else is going on? So,
That's pretty good stuff.
Yeah. So how you doing?
Maybe do some crowd work.
Yeah, it's true.
So Canada, huh? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. How long is the flight actually from Canada?
From Canada to Phoenix, 3.5 hours.
Oh,
That's
not too
it.
bad.
That's not bad. Yeah.
Mine was 2 hours. I think 1.5, 2 hours.
Your luggage goes by way of San Francisco.
Well, just in case you wanted to go there.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
What's the duct tape for? That's the real question.
oh, I left that
Have you
there.
ever
I was
cast
taping
duct
down
tape?
No,
I haven't done
I was
that.
taping down the cords
Oh,
and I forgot to move it out of your way.
Is there any questions from anybody? Are you on
I got
the
you.
chat?
Yeah. No, but
Who's here?
you got Myra. You got Brian from TBC. Walt, Leah. Let me see. Vinny.
Nice.
There, Amy's here.
Sweet,
Amy made
we
it.
got cups. So in this case, what I'm going to do is mix it all up in a big cup, and then I'm going to dump it into smaller cups. Thank you. All right. Oh,
It's a screen right there.
3, 4, 5. So I got 5 colors, and so we're doing like a color swirl. And so we're going to mix up all the resin. It just usually is easier to mix it all at once and then dump off, you know. In this case, I think I think I did some slightly different numbers, but you could just even, you know, whatever, totally wing it. It's not a big deal necessarily. But if you are going for something very specific, again, the notebook is going to be your friend, because if you want mostly green and you might alter, you know, we have 20 ounces, let's say you put 10 ounces of green in it, you need to know that, because otherwise things may change when you try to do it again. And at first, when I first got into casting, I didn't do any of that. I was just kind of playing around, which is fine, because I didn't know what I was doing, and I learned a lot that way. But I got really a lot better when I started writing notes. Then it just makes your brain think more about what you're actually doing. And then the best thing about the notebook is, if you can remember to do this, try to go back and be like, you know, you got your blanks out. If there was any problems, write that down. What caused the problem? Why, you know, what do you think is going on? And if there were other things after you've like turned it or got the finished product that you really liked, then write that down. That way you can repeat it, or at least have that note handy, you know, if you go back to do it. So
I think that sets you apart too, because like the best blank makers all have like very specific recipes and techniques
yeah.
to where they can make the same thing consistently and it looks good.
Yeah, I will say it is pretty hard to be extremely consistent. I mean, you're not going to be making blanks like the acrylic acetate ones where you can buy 50 blanks and they're literally the exact same pattern. You're never going to be able to do that. But you can get pretty close with, you know, the amounts and especially with the colors. That's one of the things that I really like doing, is trying to get very specific colors and then repeat that color.
Zach, we do have a viewer that says they miss you. So, I mean,
Who?
Gretchen Higgins.
Oh, geez.
So, geez.
I can't believe she tuned in.
Oh, she's watching.
Oh,
She
man.
misses
Now
you.
I'm going to mess
There's a
up
bunch
now.
of kissy faces on there.
A bunch of kissy faces?
Yeah, the little emoji.
Oh, you should send some
It's
back.
not really, but
Send
that's-
some back for me. Yeah, she couldn't make it out this time. She's
And Scott
ramping
says,
up.
boy, the guy on the screen is so dreamy, huh, Gretchen? Scott Kershaw.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
We just had to get him on tilt before he starts pouring. Right? What did I put in here?
What was I doing?
So fun.
Sometimes the part B gets a little sticky.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It just happens.
Especially it's so cold here.
Yeah.
70.
Yeah. They de-iced my plane in Reno, which is, honestly, I've never even seen that before actually happen. And then I land here and it's like 80, and I'm just like, this is kind of weird. All right, so we're going to put, let's see, is this in ounces? Yeah. So it's good to know how, well, one little tip that I'm going to tell people. It's good to make sure that your mold fits in the thing. Now, obviously I knew this was going to be all right, but there's been cases where it's too tall and I don't even think about it, and I'm like, now what do I do? And you have to pressurize this resin. So always, you know, especially beginners, I think it helps to kind of run through like, okay, I'm going to mix this up and think about what you're going to do. Especially this is a little bit more complicated. Maybe for your first time, you wouldn't pull out 5 cups and have all this stuff going on, just, you know, 1 or 2. But run through the steps and be like, okay, and then I'm going to, you know, pour this into my mold. I'm going to have to pick the mold up, like actually go through the steps and put it in there to make sure that, you know, like this, did you tighten this, right? Mm-hmm. So, you know, this was loose when I got this pressure pot. Mm-hmm. This thing was kind of flopping around. And when the resin's setting up, that's not when you want to know that that's not.
You got to go look for a wrench.
I was doing a demo at SWAT with Curtis. He didn't even have the thing assembled. And I don't know.
And
I'm not thinking about it.
Big thing?
Yeah, it was huge.
Giant
it was
thing.
gigantic. And I'm like, he didn't even have the insert thing, or, you know, like, and I'm like, I don't know what to do about this. So somebody else brought over another pressure pot. But so not a bad idea to run through the steps, make sure you got a compressor, because that could have been like, I'm like, so
Yeah.
Not a bad idea just to test it out, see what's going on.
Speaking of that, I'm going to charge the compressor since there's no air in it.
Thinking.
Another
always.
thing we should have done earlier.
Always thinking. See, well, and when I do demos, it's in my shop. I've got everything is literally arm's length distance. I know exactly where things are. I don't need to turn my compressor on. It's an 100,000 gallon thing that my dad bought. We have the whole thing plumbed. Like, I don't even think about like, oh, do we have a compressor? So it's not a bad idea to do these, especially if you're doing demos. Like, I probably should have done that, but you know, I walked in 5 minutes before the thing started, so.
It's hard when you do stuff at other people's places.
All right, so we want, what is it? What did you say, 20 ounces?
20 is the total,
Okay,
yeah.
so 10.
I believe so. It's been a while.
Yeah, if we're 1 or 2 short, that's not a big deal.
Yeah.
So we're going to put 10 ounces of part, I picked up B first. It doesn't really matter which one. I can't really read this thing. 7, 8. I usually do grams. It doesn't matter. It can be a little finer numbers. So you can use either grams or ounces, whichever one. For your scale, like any scale, any of these scales will work. If you plan to do very specific dye colors, I would recommend getting a scale that goes down to the 100th. So, you know, 0.00 grams, just because sometimes you need to add a very tiny amount of dye. And the more accurate or the finer the detail, the better. But other than that, to the nearest like ounce or gram should be fine. I'm not used to ounces, so like how much do I add? Okay, so we got 10 ounces of part B.
You got a shout out, Mr. Gold.
I did.
Yeah, Scott Kershaw.
Nice. Scott Kershaw's here.
He's there, that's awesome.
Yeah, you're not in the chat, so everyone's worried.
All right, and then 10 ounces of part A.
Zach, could you ever mix 2 part A's and 2 part B's?
I've done that.
Does that work okay?
That doesn't work so well. You got all the working time in the world, though. Literally.
I've never done that. I was just curious.
Yeah, no.
Especially I didn't do it on a live stream.
Yeah. The best is when you mix resins. If you want a really, really fast, like it pretty much sets up immediately, you mix, I can't remember which one it was. I think it's Alumilite Clear Slow part A plus Alumilite White part B.
Oh,
It'll
like
just
instant?
kick. It'll just kick instantly.
Well,
And if you
Alumilite
want a
White
really
in
slow
general-
one, you do the opposite.
White in general is pretty rough.
Yeah,
You know.
that's why I'm trying to get away from it. Soon. Pretty soon we should have a couple colors, the pigment colors coming. There's a few details I need to iron out before we do that, but I'm looking forward to that actually. Having a lot of fun with those pigments.
Yeah.
All right, so we're just going to mix it up. When you're mixing, you want to make sure that you're scraping the bottoms, the side of the cup, because you don't want that film. There's going to be a film of part A or part B, whichever one it is. And if you just leave it sitting there, you could get weird things going on, curing issues or blobs of resin that didn't cure in your blanks. You don't want that. So give it a good mix. Doesn't take that long. That's another thing that I like about this resin. It's pretty thin, so mixing isn't like, you're not like churning molasses. Some of them are that thick. So it mixes pretty quickly. Generally what I'm looking for, I kind of know how long to mix and how to do it, but you don't want to have like wispy, hazy trails going on in your resin. That tells you generally. Once you get it to that point, there's nothing kind of moving around. I usually go a little bit longer just to make sure that everything's kind of mixed. But with this resin, you kind of get that visual cue and know that you're good to go. Now in this case, I don't necessarily even have to have it totally perfectly mixed in this cup, because I'm going to put it in here and then start mixing again with mica powders. So I kind of did a little bit of extra. I don't know how much I usually actually scale things, like measure things out, but I'm just going to kind of wing it here.
Are you winging it because you're here?
Yeah.
It's kind of
It's the vibe, you know?
the way we roll with resin.
You just wing it at Turner's. It's chill.
Well, people always ask me how much to put in, and I'm like, whatever feels right.
So I didn't do that equally. This actually worked out perfect, because this is like literally the exact thing that I did at home.
There you go.
See what winging it does?
It's meant to be.
It either ends up really, really bad, or you're like, yeah, that's what I was doing. That's what I meant to do. Okay, so I got all these things here. I'm going to get stuff out of the way. We'll get our micas and stuff. So we got about 12 minutes of working time, somewhere around there. It's a little bit like 12 minutes of working time, I think that they say would be for like about 200 or 300 grams of resin, whatever, however much, it's probably like 5 ounces, 10 ounces, I don't know, whatever. Some amount of ounces of resin at like 72 degrees Fahrenheit. So if the temperature is significantly higher than that, you're going to have less time. If it's lower, you're going to have more time. If you've got a lot more resin, you're going to have less time because it tends to heat up faster. So there's all kinds of different things going on there. Does this have a hole in it?
It does.
Come on, get out of there.
It's cold.
Come on. Yeah. It's shy. I know. I don't need a whole lot. I don't know if I picked the right cup to put that in. We're winging it. It'll turn out good. I have faith. So this is a pretty interesting color, this dusty rose. I don't know if that's the most accurate name that I would give this. It's almost kind of bronzish in reality. It's kind of cool though. So I thought we'd pull that out. It looks pink, but when it's done, it's kind of bronzish, like I said. So let's see, pink. Definitely want mint, we want silver. Okay, so we'll just do this. I'm going to do the Chad method. I'm going to put a couple. I usually actually have teaspoons and stuff. The reason I do that is if you know exactly how much, not exact, but pretty much how much you put in there, then, actually I think the black one and the small one, but if you know exactly how much it is, then for like pen blanks, if you're doing like a kit pen, if you know how much mica you put in and it's see-through, you see the tube, then you know you need to put more in next time. If it's perfectly fine, then you know that this amount is good enough. So that's why I'm a little bit more specific about what I'm doing. Because I don't like having to recreate things and mess them up and redo them. I like less work. All right, so we're going to put the regular Starlight glitter in with the silver, and it creates a kind of, and I'm just going to kind of wing the Starlight glitter. The bigger stuff, you want a little bit more than the micro Starlight glitter. You don't need to put a whole lot of this micro in to get that kind of flash look that it produces. Let's see, green. Going to put the micro with the, that's too much. I just got done telling you don't need that much. I'm going to put a little bit more. We are battling. So if all you're doing is putting it in like transparent resin, you really don't need much. Like a lot of people use it for like your handle blanks, hybrids, just to add something to that transparent resin, just a little flicker. In that case, put a very tiny amount. Otherwise, it'll obscure the burl even. Let's see, purple. If you're trying to do something where it's a little bit more like this, I'm combating mint with that, then you'd want to put a little bit more just so it shows up better.
Zach, we have a question from John. Total newbie, can any kind of dye be added? Water-based, alcohol-based, does it matter?
That's a very good question. No, water-based, definitely not. That doesn't mix with resin. So what I always tell people is just go buy, if you're putting dyes in, buy dyes that are made for resin. It's gonna be the best way to go. And so you got, if you're going for like opaque pigments, liquid pigments, I would just go with Alumilite, or for opaque you want to go with like a divine pigment. Turner's carries that. For transparent, go with Alumilite. You're not going to have problems. If you want to venture out and try something because it's cheaper or new or whatever, try a little bit, test it. If your resin bubbles up and foams, then don't use it. Or if, do a little bit of a test to see, because some things work fine. Like acrylic paint does not work with Alumilite Clear Slow, any urethane resin. It is absolutely not going to work. Probably not going to work with epoxy even.
And would that be the same for epoxies as well as the urethanes like Clear Slow?
Well, it depends. Urethanes are the most finicky when it comes to moisture. Epoxies are a little bit more tolerant of that stuff, but in general, I wouldn't even recommend it. Polyester resin, you can put whatever you want. Motor oil, water.
Doesn't seem to matter.
It doesn't really matter, but nobody uses that anymore, usually. Unless you're doing something like labels, that's a good use of it. But I think the epoxies and urethanes are just so good at this point, there's no reason to use polyurethane because it stinks. Pretty stinky stuff. Yeah, that was a good question though. So yeah, I always recommend be careful with what you use. Now, when you're talking about like the mica powders, in general, pretty much any of those are going to work. I still recommend sticking with things that were meant, like the company knows that it's being used with resin, Eye Candy, P-Town Subby, I don't know, Pearl X is another one. I can't think of other ones. Those are the ones that I use. It's always better to use ones that obviously the company knows what it was being used for. So there's not going to be any issues, but in a very few cases, there could be some sort of a moisture product in with the mica powders. I don't know any offhand that would be that way, but like if you're just like, oh, I'm on Amazon and there's some random thing, I don't know if I'd do that. Random junk on Amazon is not what I would do. Go with an established pigment company.
When I think most liquid dyes are made with like the base of a resin without the activator to that way it blends well.
Some of them, yeah.
So if it's something not made for that, it's going to react differently.
Yeah, I don't know enough about that kind of 888.8. Oh.
Seems about right.
63, that's it? Oh, there we go, 74, okay. Yeah, I don't know. And all those things are like proprietary, so I don't know what exactly a lot of these companies use. But some of them have I don't know what the product is, but there's moisture in it. Because I remember like way back in the day, there were dyes that were made for polyester resin. And like I said, that stuff, it doesn't matter. It will cure and do whatever with whatever conditions. But it was made for that, and it would not work in anything else. So it had some sort of a moisture water, which is weird. I don't know what what the thing was that it had. Now, another way to use the micro starlight that I really like is putting it in black. It makes like a space looking kind of stars. So that's another cool way to use it. I like using I guess either of them, but usually I go with the chunky starlight to do the blurple. So I put the blue to purple color shift powder plus this, plus like 1 drop of violet, and it just pops everything. So that one's a pretty fun one to mix. There's all kinds of ways to use glitter. It doesn't have to be starlight glitter or whatever, but there's so many ways to use glitter with your resins that, I don't know, in most people, I think that, I don't know, especially the men out there are like, glitter. You know, they start, glitter. I don't know about that glitter stuff. And then they do it and they're like, oh, I need all the glitters on the planet, because they just add so much fun to the blanks, you know?
Zach, do you ever use a drill and silicone paddle to mix resin?
Not usually. If it's a super thick resin, then yeah. If it's a ton of resin, then yeah. But not typically.
And then another question, why are you taking the temperature of each cup?
Just to make sure what's going on with all of them. Some colors actually heat up, like a lot of times reds, I don't know what it is about red pigments, they tend to heat up the resin faster. I don't know, some of them don't too. Orange?
Orange does too, yeah.
Especially your liquid pigments. This thing takes forever to take the temperature. It's like, I don't know.
We can grab that other one. That
No,
red
it's
one's quicker.
okay. I'm just usually it's like,
Yeah.
quick draw. So I like to just see. Now, one of the things, like this cup has barely anything in there compared to all the rest of them. The other ones are like up to here. This one's probably going to heat up at a slower pace. Luckily, for the most part, mica powders, mixing them, pouring vertically, you just don't get that much color bleed with these things. Actually, do you have like one of those little, like a coat hanger stick or something?
Yeah.
Do you use something for?
Yeah, I'll
Just
grab you
a quick, it can be straight. It doesn't need to be all bent and weird.
Yeah.
Straight's fine. But yeah, I find that the mica powders are very tame, especially for newbies. If that's what you want to do is like swirly blanks, I would start with mica powders first, then move into your liquid pigments, because they just the liquid pigments tend to be a little bit more bleedy. They can kind of bleed together a little bit more. So while you're kind of getting your feet wet, I think mica powders are a better way to go.
This is a dual stick. It has the bent end and the straight end.
Nice.
Very high tech.
I like that. It's really long, so you don't have to worry. Cool. Oh, there's half a blank in here. Huh.
Well,
You know,
surprises.
it's like Christmas.
You know why? Because the halves are harder to get out because you don't
I
notice
know, you
they're in
can't
there. You can't see them.
Yeah, and so for anybody that hasn't, there we go, 79, hasn't used a vertical silicone mold, the way you get these out is you grab an air compressor with an air gun nozzle and fire air in there, and it'll pull it out, because there's no way that you're going to just manipulate this thing to get it out of there. So the thing is, you really want to fill these, because we got a half a blank in here, and if the resin only goes halfway up, the air's not going to get it out of there. So you got to just pour more on top, and you got a really fun blank. I don't know what the first half is. It's a surprise. Is Gretchen still hanging out?
I haven't seen her for a minute.
Yeah, she needs to be working.
Zach, will you push those cups forward just a little bit so they can see under that overhead? There you go. Perfect. That's actually an awesome spot.
Right here?
Yep.
Yeah,
There you go.
it's looking good.
Yeah, you can
So,
really see all the colors.
We've got some of the big starlight glitter. I put too much silver in here, but got the big. I'm going to put some more big chunky starlight. We're just going to do this. We're going to fill it.
Go for it.
We're going to go for it. So if anybody wants to order these two, the starlights, you can get it online on my website. And if you want a 15% off, enter code GLITTER during checkout, and you get to save yourself some cash.
That's awesome. And you do still have Gretchen here. She is working though, but
I know.
she is watching.
I know. I was just giving her hell.
And John, tomorrow there's 4 live streams as well as stuff going on here at the shop if you're local. So you can check that out on the same page here.
Seems like it's ready. I don't trust this thing.
Did I bring the other one? No, I didn't. Yeah, try that red one over there, Zach.
Oh, okay.
See if it's the same.
Yeah, let's see. Yeah, that says 92. I don't know. This thing.
I gave you the orange one because it was cleaner, but I don't use the orange one, so.
It's because it's not accurate.
Right.
I don't know what's happening.
Well, I've never used it.
I think we're about ready. So what I'm looking for is, and it's a little cooler even, I think, than my shop in here, just a little bit. And a few degrees can kind of make a difference. So like somewhere around 90 is probably good. I mean, I could probably have poured at like 80 or 85, but how's the overhead? I don't know
Overhead?
which one
Oh,
do you
sorry,
want?
right there.
Okay, so
Yeah,
that's
you're good.
Okay, I didn't know which one you wanted to
Yeah.
be showing.
No, that's perfect.
All right, so let's just do this. And honestly, you could do whatever method of pouring you want. I usually just kind of go through, and I think what I'm going to do, because I don't know for sure that, do we need to put something down or anything?
No.
Just scrape it off? Okay.
You're all good.
Winging it. I usually just do this. I just kind of go through, pour each color. But you know, there's all kinds of different like strategies to get different possible effects. You could like count, you know, how much resin you're putting in. Sometimes you may only want to put so much of one color. You could stagger the colors instead of, I'm just going through and putting, you know, repeating. That's by far the easiest way to do it. You can do like, almost like it's kind of half and half, where like, let's say we wanted the bottom half of our blank to be silver and mint, and then the top is, you know, some other thing. So we pour until these things are pretty much run out, and then, so you can get different looks in your blanks, basically, depending on like how you pour it. Sometimes we do you can 3D print these cups. I know Jake does his kind of version of like a cone. I've done just split cups where there's like 2 chambers, and that's kind of a fun way to get a different look where it's just pouring it straight down. Now you can also do like, some people are super ambidextrous and they're like multiple cups all at once. That never worked for me.
That's what I do.
It's just a complete mess, and I can't
I
stand
like
it.
to pour the 2 streams to where they're twisting as they go
Yeah.
into the blank. It always looks cool.
So there's lots of different cool ways to do things with pouring, and you can kind of come up with your own methods. And if you come up with something, I think one of the things that we all strive for as resin casters is trying to be able to do it repeatedly, get consistent results doing something. So, and these are the areas I think where if you find that, I mean, if you're generous and don't care that much, then fine, you can share with other people. I'd say that's the thing to keep in your pocket. Like, don't tell everybody how you did this amazing thing that, you know, that's a good one to keep in your.
Zach, Marquetta said it really resonates with her.
Yeah, that's true. It's so fun, SEW.
Yeah.
All right, so we're getting pretty close here. I'm leaving one a little bit low because I don't know if we have
What's your
enough
temp
resin.
now, do you think?
What's what?
The temperature.
I have no clue. Probably like 100, 95, 100. I don't know. That thing said 95. I don't know where the beam was shooting though.
Yeah. It's science. There's no way to know.
Okay, so we got black. Got some silver going on. I think this 20 ounces is going to be enough. We got the compressor popping on. Do a little bit more of this pink
least it's not too loud.
No, I love those new quiet compressors. It's getting pretty thick. Now, one thing that you can do also is you can use like a stick or whatever and just go in and kind of give it a little bit of a swirl. I usually kind of wipe the resin down. This thing's a little bit long, but it's sticky on the bottom. So you can do that. I'm not going to mess with it. It's just,
You don't need to mess with it.
Yeah, I don't need to mess with it. You don't have to do that though. If you want a little bit more swirl, that works pretty good.
There you go.
If you don't want to do swirl, you can kind of blob it, and I like that too.
You want me to get you since you're sticky?
Okay. I love these pressure pots. So these, if you're getting into casting, this is the pressure pot to get, I think, or the 5-gallon if you plan to do larger things. But if most of what you're doing, especially off the bat, is smaller pen blanks and like maybe bottle stoppers and all that kind of stuff, this 2.5-gallon California Air Tools pressure pot, it's so awesome. Now I recommend setting the regulator on these things so you don't have to think, but we're going to make sure that everything's good to go, especially if it's not your equipment. Make sure you don't overinflate these things.
Zach, will you be attending SWAT this year?
I should be, yes.
Excellent.
Well,
Mr. Gold will be there. Jim will probably be there.
unless something that is unforeseen at this point happens.
Darren said he came for the resin, but staying for the dad jokes.
Yeah. Did you know this thing was only set to 40?
I don't know who used it
Is it
last,
new?
so I did. No, it wasn't me. Somebody else was using
No,
it.
is it a new pot?
No. No, it's been around.
Okay, so so this pot goes up to the working pressure. It says on the top of this lid, operating pressure of 60 psi. This is important because you don't want to go over. These things are totally safe as long as you don't over pressurize these things. If you do that or modify them, start welding on it to do I don't know what, that's when your thing's going to blow up. But as long as you're following the guidelines on the pot, you're good to go. So 60 psi for this one is plenty. That's all you need. It's not really, unless you got to like 1,000 psi, I think 50, 60, 70, 80, it doesn't matter. You're going to get the same results. And what this is doing is collapsing the air bubbles that have formed in your resin.
Can you explain that a little bit, how that works?
Like what? How the pressure works on it?
Well, because I think a lot of people think when you resin cast, you're pulling the air out.
Okay, so there's two different ways you can go. And a lot of people ask, should I use vacuum, which is sucking air out, or should I use pressure? And so generally for most resin casting things, pressure is what you want. In this case, what it's doing is it's collapsing bubbles to a very small size. And then the resin sets up around it, and it's effectively, they're just gone. They may still be technically in there, but once we asked somebody's dad who was an engineer, because I wanted to understand what the physics are, like what's actually going on. And according to him, it's kind of like the same idea as carbonation in like soda cans. There's no bubbles as long as it's pressurized and closed, right? But the minute you pop it, then all of that comes out. And so it's what they call it's in solution, is what the words are. Now, again, I don't know if this is true, okay? This is the speculation that we've heard. When it comes to this, when it converts from a liquid to a solid, it's in solution and effectively just gone. The bubbles are gone. What you will notice, though, and I like this theory because what you'll notice is if you had like a brick, sometimes you'll just pour like a square brick, the top will have a bunch of half bubbles or half like little pinholes on the top, and you're like, oh my God, what happened? Everything inside is totally bubble free, but the top, what's happening is the bubble is basically being expanded halfway, and it creates a divot in the top surface. Now, the opposite is vacuum, and that's where it's sucking it out. And in theory, that would make more sense, actually, to pull it completely out. It's expanding them until they pop. So it's not just, it's supposedly not there. It's literally you pulled it out. But the problem is vacuum works very slow. This works instantly. Vacuum is like slowly pulling it out. And so what ends up happening is, especially with this resin, by the time I got it in the pressure pot, if then I started doing the vacuum, what I would have is it would set up with a bunch of bubbles and look like some kind of crazy art piece. So that's why vacuum generally doesn't work. If you're doing vacuum with resin casting, a lot of the people that do the big tabletop things, they will vacuum their epoxy, okay? But we're talking like a 2-hour, if not longer, working time, and they're not vacuuming the finished product. They're vacuuming, they stir it up, put the big pot of resin in the vacuum chamber and suck out a bunch of the air. Then they pour it so that it's just not there, and then the rest just kind of float out. That makes sense. That's fine. But in this case, you want it to just stay in place. Like the pressure also doesn't affect it. It's not bubbling out. It's literally compressing it down in, and so it works better. Pressure is the way to go for this type of use, I would say.
Very, very good.
So are there any other questions from the chat or from anybody?
Yeah, anybody else in the chat have any questions? Anybody in here have any questions?
You said the prop was rated to 60. Is that what you push it to?
60 PSI is where, yeah. And like I said, I think that it's easiest to just, why I was saying that I like this pressure pot, Turner's carries it. They have their California Air Tools is the brand, and they finally came out with ones. Like when I started casting, you had to take these are not cast. I mean, this one is actually made for casting kind of, but they were like paint spraying things that they didn't know what we were using them for. And so we had to like do a bunch of plumbing and convert all this stuff. Now you literally open the box and you can plug it in. The only thing that you need to do is just adjust the regulator to make sure that and for anybody that doesn't know, what the regulator is going to do is allow me to just slap on a compressor, totally open up the entire thing, and what it's going to do is it's going to go until whatever I've set the regulator to. So, and it's just a matter of twisting it one way or the other. So the first time you use these things, you just plug it in and just be careful. Look at, it has the gauge. Keep your hand on the shutoff, the ball cock valve, and just keep an eye on where it's getting to. Most likely, they're not going to ship it with the regulator set to like 3,000 PSI. It's probably going to be low, and then you just open it up a little bit. It'll allow it to go a little higher. And then once you've had that set, then it's just, you don't have to think. You just plug it in and move on. But if you're using somebody else's, be aware.
Always be aware.
You may not know.
Zach, and I know you touched on it a little bit, but like, if you did this at 40 versus 50 versus 60, you don't think you're going to get a lot of difference?
Not really. I think, so there is a minimum. 40, I think, is like the minimum. If you start getting too far below that, it's just not, bubbles may not collapse as much. I mean, the more pressure, the smaller technically the bubbles are going to get, but you're just kind of, once you get to like 50, I think that's kind of the sweet spot. 50 is good. The other thing you got to think about is if there's any kind of an air leak, you don't want to start at 40, because if it drops over, whenever, and it depends on the resin. That's another reason why I like this resin. In 30 minutes, it's hard. Like you could technically pull this out probably in about 30 minutes, maybe an hour. I would recommend longer, but you could do it in that short amount of time. Now, with a lot of epoxies, 8 hours are going by. And so if your pressure pot's just dropping PSI the whole time, it's not very good. So, most pressure pots, like I think if you can get one that goes up to, will go up to 50 or 60, I think that's the sweet spot. You don't need much more than that. I don't think there's a big advantage to getting one that goes to 70 or 80. Now the top of this says the max tank pressure is 80. I would generally just recommend staying away from that.
Yeah.
I think when it says operating, that means repeatedly in my mind. Max is like, okay, maybe once you can hit 80 with this thing, but
or you forgot to set your regulator.
yeah.
It's not going to
Now, the other thing about these is if you totally screw up and didn't set the regulator or whatever, there is a safety valve on this thing that will blow at whatever it's set to. Most likely it's 80. So you're probably okay, but it's always better to just know and not push the limits of these things.
Very good.
Hey,
Any questions?
any questions? Any concerns? Yeah.
Can you tell everybody or just talk about your normal live stream time?
Oh yeah. So normally I'm doing streams on Saturdays at noon, and it usually ends up being where we like make blanks one week and then turn them. See what I like to do. Like I said, I like to experiment, see what this color combination might be, or try something. Stick something random in the resin and see what it looks like. So a lot of it's like experiment based, where I'm like, okay, let's do this, and everybody in the chat kind of usually gets a little bit involved. Sometimes we have everybody pick colors or whatever. So we cast some blanks and then we turn them up and see what we got.
And you're noon in Nevada, which is Pacific
time, yeah. So that's
And our normal time here on Turners TV is Wednesday at 1 Arizona time. Yes, Joe.
To keep your color separation, do you go by temperature mainly?
temperature. Yeah.
Joe asked if to keep color separation, do you go by temperature?
Yeah, how to keep the colors separated was the question. And temperature is the best. When I first started, it made the most sense to me to do time, just because you had a working time for the resin. And a lot of people started using temperature, and I'm like, what's the deal with this temperature thing? But it's more consistent if you use temperature, because time, how long did it take you to stir your cups? And there's more variability with time. Sometimes it's not bad to have a timer and see, like start the clock when you start pouring it, but temperature is the most consistent. Regardless of the temperature in the shop, it's going to give you more consistent results.
And what temperature would you suggest starting the pour and finishing?
It depends on the temperature in the shop with that. I adjust things as I go. So when it's colder in the shop, you can pour at a lower temperature and still keep that separation. So right now, I was looking at like 90 degrees. It's like 65 to 68 in here. So like 90 is probably plenty. 85 might work, especially with mica powders. They tend to stay separated a little bit better than dyes. So that's, but in the summer in my shop, when it's like 85 in my shop in the summer, I mean, I'd probably wait till like 105, 110. Maybe. It just depends, and you got to kind of play with that. If you can have the best shop for resin casting it's 72 every day. I don't care what time of year it is. If you can have a stable temperature, humidity, and all that stuff, you're going to have a great time. You're not going to have to worry about any of that stuff. It'll probably be 95 or so every single time.
When you're done with that, how much time do I have to get it in the pressure pot?
That depends on the resin you're using. This one's a 12-minute working time. So the question was, how long do I have when you're done pouring to get it in the pressure pot? With Alumilite Clear Slow, it's about a 12-minute working time. That kind of varies depending on how much resin, the temperature in the shop is. The thing is, that's the thing, right? You're waiting until the end of the working time when it's starting to thicken up a little bit. So you don't have a whole lot of time. But with this, I had a few more minutes before it would have been concerning to me, where I'm like, don't talk to me. So it's pretty good. But that's one of the things, when people say, well, I need more working time. If you're doing this color separation thing, that's great, but you're going to be mixing your resin up and then sitting there for 30 minutes. So that's another reason why I don't like those in general. I don't want to wait 30 minutes till we're at the right time, because you're not gaining anything. You're still in a hurry. No matter which one, you're waiting until the end, and there's generally a kind of you got to get it in there.
So if you wait till 100 before it gets in the pot, will you still get your bubbles out?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. So if you wait until it's a higher temperature, will you have air bubbles? And that, if you wait too long, there may be air bubbles still. It may not be able to collapse them fully. It just depends. It depends.
So to piggyback on that, Scott asked, why does Jake wait till 100? And I mean, obviously, I don't know Jake personally, but I always do like 95.
Well, I think here's another thing. You need to know how you're doing this, because I stir, before I take the temperature, I stir the cup again. I'm pretty sure Jake just doesn't.
And the surface is always
Which means,
different.
the way resin works, the middle is going to be the hottest part of it. It's all surrounded, so the middle's the hottest. And I don't know. I've always just done the stir thing because it kind of makes the top about equal to everything else. There's drawbacks to doing that though, because if let's see, I'm trying to think of what the situation is.
Well, let me ask you another follow-up to that. Is there a point in the temp where you think it won't allow the bubbles to be squashed?
It depends.
Yeah,
It really
you'll just have to
depends.
figure out what your conditions are.
Because in some, like I actually made blanks for somebody, like a customer, and I was like, and I know this guy, and I knew what he was doing. It was like a big deal, right? So I'm like, I want to make sure there's great color separation. I waited too long. They were all bubbly, and he's like, yeah, they're trash. And I'm like, here's a refund, dude. And it wasn't like, it was so much. I waited a few ticks higher, and it just didn't work. So it just depends. Sometimes things are in, and it wasn't all the blanks. Because I think I poured 2 different batches at once in that case. Half of them had bubble. I don't know. So it just depends, you know.
Hey, Zach, can you show that finished blank to the overhead for the
Sure.
people watching online?
Thanks. Is the overhead one?
Yeah, right. You're perfect.
So this is
right
what
there.
we're kind of going for. There were a couple different colors, and I actually, the black should have been the small cup. In this, am I on the camera?
Yep, perfect.
So it's going to be a little bit different, but pretty close. But again, what I wanted to do was just kind of utilize the glitter. And it doesn't have to be, like I said, it doesn't have to be my Starlight glitter or whatever, but glitter can be used with all kinds of different stuff. It doesn't have to be the main attraction. You can put it with mica powders, you can put it with dyes, you can put it with whatever you want, or alone. And it adds a lot to blanks, and I think it's fun. I was one of those. I was like, glitter? Really? Do I need glitter? And the minute I bought some, I was like, glitter every time.
Yep.
Yes, more glitter, please. So
Very
cool.
Well, they should be your glitter though, and your
Yeah, and
at the top of the
well, and
Yeah.
that's why I only have 2. I'm not going into the glitter business because I liked these 2. The micro, like I said, what it does is it adds just little specks of like a holographic, you know, bling. And then the big chunky ones, you can't find this. It's not like you just go to the glitter store and they have this. I sought out these 2 because they're useful for
Here.
for every
Amy's favorite
type of
ring,
thing.
or one of her
Yeah, her
favorites,
ring
is
has-
made of that glitter.
You can see it on that camera.
Probably not.
Yeah, probably
It's not very good.
Yeah, but it's fun. So
Yeah.
hopefully it'll give you guys some thoughts to mix. Now we're gonna pull these things out. I'm gonna turn. So like I said, the reason that I pre-made this is because I don't really want to turn these tomorrow. A lot of people say, how long do you have to wait? And I could turn it tomorrow, but it's gonna be soft. It's not gonna polish that well. It's just not gonna be awesome. So. These things, I would want to give them like 2 or 3 days,
We don't want to oven cure them. We don't.
and I don't do that usually. I do want to get into it, but so I thought, let me just make one, you know, ahead of time.
Yep.
Then we're good to go. We don't have to worry about any of this stuff. Any other questions, concerns?
The size of the glitter helped to fill out the mica powder? I'm not quite sure. The size of the glitter helped to fill out the mica powder. The glitter's a lot bigger than the mica. I'm not exactly sure what the question is, but yeah.
Well, the micro is, both glitters. Glitter's going to be bigger than the
lot
particle size of mica powders, unless you're talking about like the 14 karat nugget. That stuff's pretty big. But yeah, most of your real mica powders, it's going to be a finer thing. And so what you get with mica powders is like a pearly look. This adds sparkle. So I guess that's the simplest way to think about it. If you want to add sparkle, put some glitter in there because it kind of reflects and refracts that light. Whereas mica powders just kind of swirl it up a little bit and change the way that it's reflecting, more like a pearly color. So,
Very good.
So
Any other
so tune in
questions?
tomorrow to see. I'm going to turn, and a lot of what we're doing is polishing. We kind of wanted to kind of focus on my polishing methods, which I do on my stream a lot, but you know, there's a lot of people that haven't seen it. Maybe up close also changes things because you only get one little angle when I'm on my stream. So we'll just do that. And
Yeah, and
fun
what
with
time
it.
are you on tomorrow? So we have
No
starting tomorrow at 10. Amy, correct me if I'm wrong. 10, we got Jim, followed by Kate. If there's a Kate, raise your hand. Kate at 11. And then you're at 1, I think.
Yeah,
And then
probably.
Emily at 3. So it's going to be a fun day tomorrow.
It's
In addition to all the demonstrations
yeah,
out
there's
back.
like,
Yeah.
who's out back? Record and Record
The
Power.
Arizona Wood Club will be out back. Record Power, Rycon.
Rycon.
Dan, a wood carver, who's
Oh, yeah,
like
that's
a
right.
world-class wood carver, will be out there.
So lots of things going
Easy
on.
Wood Tools will be out there.
Oh,
A couple
nice.
other, yeah.
Cool.
And like Rich said, most importantly, there'll be pizza.
Cool.
And Michael McEwen is here.
Yeah.
And Mr. Gold is here, so
Mr.
excellent.
Gold.
All right.
Cool.
Well, any other questions? I think we're going to end the live stream. All right. Thanks,
All right,
Zach.
thanks everybody. It was fun.
I'll give it, the delay.
The delay. Like we don't know what's going on, and I like the delay.
Here, I'll do fade to